What's up, everybody? Another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, all the places you can find podcasts, and find us on Twitter and Facebook and all the places to keep up with our upcoming guests and just keep updated on other documentaries and books and stuff that's inspiring us on the show and stuff. And so definitely do that. And today we got RELIC from Crackin Films. And it's funny how I came about this. A lot of people spend a lot of time surfing the web and running into stuff. And I just ran into his documentary called Owned and Operated. You can find it on YouTube in high definition for free. So which kind of is a good sign of kind of the type of guy he is, and that he cares more about the message than he does trying to make a profit off it. And he's just with us today to, I just got basically inspired by the documentary. I was just blown away with how well done it was, and that I've never heard of it was kind of surprising. But he had tons of views on YouTube, so it's a very popular film. But so I was just kind of blown away, and then I just touched base with them, see if he wanted to come on and then talk about it. Anybody who listens to this show knows that documentaries are a huge influence on me, and I think it's a great way of getting a message across. I think in 2014, people just it's hard to get people to sit down and read. So I think visually through some sense of entertainment, some type of entertainment like documentaries is a great way of getting a message across and getting people's attention. And I've had tons of filmmakers on the show, and so I figured why not have him on and talk about his film and hopefully kind of spread it to some more people and have people check it out. So I just want to thank Relic for being with me today.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me on, man.
Hey, thanks. So let's get right to how this came about. For people who aren't familiar with the film, what inspired it? What was the root of it? What caused this film? Were you looking to do a documentary? Was it something that just came about, or how did that start?
Well, in the beginning, I think I mostly just at some point became interested in making a video, and I don't know if I had an idea for a 5-minute video or a 20-minute video or what, but I'd always been kind of interested in video media of any sort, short films, long films, what have you, and this just became it was mostly a learning experience for me in the beginning to just sort of put something together. But as time went on, it got bigger and bigger, and some of the ideas kind of got more and more fleshed out, and it began to actually feel like, yeah, maybe I should actually make this a full 105-minute, I don't know if you want to call it a feature exactly, but that length of a project, that large of a scope. So it just sort of fell into place. That's just kind of how it happened. Like I said, the whole project was really it was a learning experience for myself, and it was kind of born out of me trying to challenge myself to do something bigger and more difficult than I was capable of. So that's where the motivation to actually do it to begin with came from. The ideas and the sort of theme or narrative behind it came from just kind of the things that I had become interested in, which was questioning the system, questioning society, questioning a lot of things that we kind of took for granted as being normal, and it had sort of been a new trend in my life to actually be even asking questions at all about some of these things. And so that was just sort of where my head was at the time. And I work on computers, so I'm fairly computer savvy, and I could kind of set my social media feeds to kind of deliver a lot of this sort of content to me by subscribing to certain page. I mean, a lot of people nowadays kind of know how that works, but that's what I was doing a few years ago before I started this project, and that's how I found a lot of the content that I ended up using in that in the movie was actually other people sharing things with me, and finding video from friends and finding video from people I subscribe to, and news articles and everything like that. So for the most part, it just kind of fell into place. Once the whole thing was done, I did go back and try and clean it up. There was a messier version that was maybe a little more disjointed the first time around, but I cleaned it up, so it was a little bit more of a streamlined presentation at the end there.
Yeah, the two things I really liked about it was I like how you did it in parts, how you kind of, you told a story without really any narration, which was a really interesting way of doing it. It's funny because I had Abby Martin's brother on like a couple weeks ago, and he did a documentary called American Anthrax, and we talked about that type of film. And I was saying how I just watched one similar to that, Own and Operate, and I brought yours up, how I like that type of format where you don't have so much, a narration, and people can say, oh, well, he's trying to sell you he has an agenda, he's trying to sell you an idea, I mean, you basically put the dots and let our mind connect them, and just kind of tell the story. And it was very interesting how you told the story. I think I read in the video description, like how you wanted to do it from like the eyes of the internet, tell the story about. And it was that's an interesting way of putting it, because that's kind of how we get all our information now is the internet and media and stuff like that. So it was really interesting. How was that something you wanted to do? You didn't want any narration, or you didn't want a host or anything. You kind of just wanted to put a bunch of film clips together and press clippings and stuff that told the story on its own.
That kind of came a little bit later. I don't think I started out wanting it to do it that way, but like I said, it was the idea was very bare bones to begin with. Later on, as the narration sort of took form, or I shouldn't say the narration, the narrative took form. It became kind of clear that was the way that it was already going, and so I just sort of tried to think about it in those terms and do it as well as I was capable of doing it, under the assumption that was how the rest of the film was going to be made.
Yeah. The other thing is that what I liked about your film is you put a lot of people in the film who I'm a lot of people that I'm a fan of, but a lot of the same people disagree with a lot of specifics. But I think it's like the one thing everybody agrees on is the fact that like there needs to be change. You had like Adam Kokesh in there. You had Rogan, Peter Joseph. You had James Corbett, Lee Camp. And some people believe that
Alex Jones.
And, yeah, you had tons of people in there, and a lot of those people we all agree. And it's kind of sucks because I've had Jason Burmez, who did a part of Loose Change, and we talked about the Zeitgeist movement, and he kind of brushed it off and thought it was kind of like unrealistic and this and that, and it's funny how and then there's I think just recently before he was on, he had a debate with Adam Kokesh that was online, and about basically one was kind of we need to fix government. The other one's, Adam Kokesh is more like an anarchist libertarian who says we should just get rid of government and market would regulate itself. And it kind of, I always look at him like, dude, shouldn't we all just focus on the fact that we all agree that, that something needs to be changed and we need to do something different. And it kind of sucks, it kind of bothers me a little bit when I see people that at the end have the same goal of trying to fix this unfair, screwed up kind of system that we have right now. But then we kind of turn on each other, and then it's like, we call Alex Jones crazy, and then we call, and don't get me wrong, Alex Jones can be over the top, but at least, and he had a debate with Peter Joseph that was really popular, and Peter Joseph actually had a debate with Stefan Molly, I can't say his last name, whatever his last name is, and which is, and it kind of, it like all that stuff, it's like, and then people are picking sides, and I'm like, aren't we becoming the Democrats and Republicans where we're like picking teams and like we're turning against each other? It's like, can't we just focus on the fact that like things are fucked up, and it's like, let's work on, I think what we end up doing, we end up separating people and then turning people off to some people's work that actually is good. Like Alex Jones's fans might not like Peter Joseph now, when Peter Joseph makes a lot of good points and a lot of the same points. like you look at when it comes down to even Noam Chomsky, for example. How he's kind of this anti 9/11. Oh, I don't even want to talk about it. It seems insane. But then he says a lot of good things when it comes down to Edward Bernays and Walter Lippmann and these people who have influenced marketing and public relations. So it kind of sucks that, people turn against each other instead of focusing on the fact that, well, okay, well, we don't have to believe everything somebody says. Let's you can still respect the fact that they're putting out a useful message just to, just regardless of the fact that there's some specifics that they don't agree on. And did you ever think about that? Like, how a lot of these people you have on your movie, like some of these people don't even agree with each other, but yet like you made a really good documentary that you put all the similarities, you focus on the similarities and not like all the stuff that was different. And that was, I thought, was an important kind of message to get across.
Yeah. What I think you're talking about is that people nitpick over the details of personality. and they actually will equate the value of somebody's argument with the person themselves, and that's kind of it's a habit that most people have because it's kind of just how our society kind of works right now. That's an integral component to our society is the fact that whoever's doing the talking, their reputation is part of their argument. And in some settings, maybe that's okay, but I tend to be of the idea that in the day and age of the internet that we have right now, it's far more important to be focusing on ideas. And so by putting all of these people next to each other, that like you say, some of them have radically different viewpoints on specific topics, but you go to different topics and they're nearly identical, if not identical. Put just by focusing on those parts, I think that maybe I would like to say that maybe it does a little bit to strip away some of that sort of personality of I don't know how to say it exactly, the equating their personality with their argument component to listening to somebody. I don't know if that worked for everybody. Some people have complaints about me putting this guy or that guy in there, and so clearly they were still going down that road. But a lot of people said kind of what you said is, we're talking about the ideas, and by focusing on what we have in common and kind of setting aside our differences, so to speak, there's a lot of progress that could be made there.
Yeah, I think that, we all have the same goal of trying to make the world a better place, as corny as that sounds, and I think that that's kind of the goal of most people. I think that, I don't necessarily believe, or subscribe to the theory of, anarchist libertarians, but I understand the fact that they think it would work, and their purpose isn't they want to make the world a corrupt corporate, dominated place. They truly believe that it would work and make the world a better place. So I feel like the intentions are important, and the intentions might be good, even though you might not agree with the philosophy. And how has been the feedback on the film? You get a lot of positive feedback. Obviously, you reference the fact that you got some shitheads who probably will nitpick about, oh, you put this guy and that guy and whatnot. But
Yeah.
for the most part, has it been positive? And how's your friends
Yeah.
and family feel about it? And you have any you share with any of your close friends and family? And
Yeah, all of my friends and family have seen it, and that's a bit of a can of worms. But I knew that going in. In my personal life before I had made this movie, I don't think that I had indicated to too many people some of the things that I had been thinking about. I tended to be more of the, hey, let's go to the bar and get drunk kind of a guy, right?
yeah, yeah,
So it was a little bit of a. I know there were some people that I'm pretty close with that were a little shocked to see me make something like this. But now that it's happened, I mean, now it's. I was talking to somebody before a long time ago, like a year ago, about this, and it was a little bit similar to coming out of the closet to your dad who fought in World War II, and he's that type of guy.
yeah, yeah.
Trying to say, hey, I'm gay. Well, this was my experience of doing that, going to my family who's very not political. Well, most of them not very political, and a lot of them not anti-establishment, at least not to the extent that I am, and being like, hey, here I am, this is me. But it turned out fine. They were very, very open-minded about the whole thing. As far as general feedback just from people online, it's been 99.9%. It's been very positive, and some people are very enthusiastic about their praise, and I appreciate that. Although I don't know that I'm always real comfortable with that. That's not really my personality, but I appreciate that the vast majority of people didn't hate it. The few folks that did hate it, they tend to have specific things about it that they didn't like, and they're almost always extremely specific. Like I said, they won't like it because I put Peter Joseph in there, or they won't like it because I put Jacques Fresco in there. Like, they just won't like the whole movie, or they won't like it because I didn't put so and so in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Ironically, one of the most ridiculous and yet most common dislikes is the music choice. A lot of people did not like the choice of music. That's definitely the most common thing that I hear
Really?
from the people that didn't like it. And there's not much I can do about that. I mean, I try to pick music that I like, but also that I think fits. I don't think that in any future projects that I have that I'm going to be curtailing my choice of music. I tend to listen to a lot of heavy metal, so I think using only a little bit of heavy metal is pretty. I'm already pandering a little bit there, so
Yeah, I saw. No, 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 not at all. I'm actually. It's funny because I grew up as a metalhead, and you can't see, but there's an Iron Maiden poster behind me, and I actually do metal music. I don't know how familiar you are with this podcast or any of my work, but I have this music project called Theory Six. This is actually how the podcast came about. Was I first started. I played in a band growing up, and then I anybody who plays in a band knows that it gets impossible to keep people together as they get older and life gets in the way. And a lot of that goes into what your film talks about, and this idea that we convince people, a good lifestyle is just growing up, paying your bills, having kids, and then dying, and that like doing something that fulfills you isn't that important. It's like it's a respectful type of lifestyle where people can be proud of just paying your bills and just getting through life and surviving, and so then once the band broke up, I wasn't satisfied with that. I felt like there could be more that I could do. It's similar with yourself, I'm guessing, with this film, where you just kind of felt like you weren't fulfilled, that I could do a little more. So then I started doing music on my own, which was a Theory 6 project, and the theme song for this podcast is actually one of my songs. And I do some electronic music and some metal music because those are like my two big influences. I love. I know you had Lamb of God in your film, and I believe you had Lamb of God, right? Didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I'm a big, I grew up listening to Lamb of God. I'm a big As Lay Dying fan. I'm wearing a In Fear and Faith shirt right now, and I love metalcore. I grew up listening to metal, and I also like electronic music. But it was just, and then I got to the point where I'm just like, dude, doing music on your own is so much fucking work, and it takes so long, especially with most of us who have like, we're stuck in a world where we constantly have bills where you can work 40 hours a week and still barely survive, and which is ridiculous. I mean, I think that people argue about minimum wage. I think, minimum wage, it's living wage and minimum wage are two different things. It's like, and it's just, we're at the point where it's just like you could work 40 hours a week and still be poor, which is crazy to me, and which tells you something. But to not make this rant too big, eventually I end up doing the podcast because I'm like, this is a quicker reward, and I can get it out quicker, and I can get kind of a lot of people, a lot of films that I love. I would watch documentaries that I just had Peter McGrain from Ethos. You ever watch the documentary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have seen.
I just had him on Wednesday or Thursday or whatever it was, but I just put that up, and awesome guy. And it's cool that a lot of people who haven't watched his film or your film, I get a chance to kind of do my part of kind of, trying to spread the word and let people know that about these people who doing this great work, and maybe exposing it to some people who wouldn't, necessarily have seen it. So I kind of felt like that was kind of doing my part. Is that one of the things with your film was the idea that like you felt like you wanted to do, because like you said, you're not I was with my co-host yesterday, and we're having a couple drinks, and I was telling him he couldn't make today's show, and he's like, oh, who's on tomorrow? I'm like, well, I'm like, his online name's Relic, and then he kind of looked at me weird. I'm like, it kind of tells you something about him. I'm like, his real name's Dave, but I'm like, the thing is, he obviously doesn't care about advertisement or trying to make himself famous. I'm like, he doesn't even use his real name. I'm like, I put my name on everything. It's like, oh, Ripple Effect Podcast with Ricky Varandas, and I'm like, damn. And I'm like, maybe that's kind of a fucking egotistic thing to do. I'm like, maybe I should have an online name, but it kind of said something about your character. You care more about the message than you do trying to get attention for putting out the message. And I mean, similar, like when you're talking about, well, I kind of don't like to be the center of attention so much. It reminded me of Peter Joseph, kind of the idea that he says that it's a leadership movement, the idea that, a lot of people say that he kind of seems like a cult leader or whatever. And I'm like, dude, have you heard the guy talk? I'm like, he doesn't even want the Zeitgeist movement to exist if there is some type of global change, it's like, that's his goal. I'm like, well, does that sound like a cult? I'm like, so it just, so it definitely, it's a reflection of your character. But was that one of the motivations with the film, was like trying to do something that you felt like had more meaning and kind of doing, so you felt like I could do more?
Yeah, I think when I was originally drawn to doing a video project, what appealed to me a lot about it is that I can. It's a way. It's one of many, but it's a way of constructing an argument without standing on a stage, so to speak, and that in itself, just that appeals to me. I don't really, like I said, I mean, it's not really my personality to seek of a lot of attention, and that includes doing something that I would feel is important to me. I prefer to just sort of do it on my own, and not really have too many other people involved or around. But with this particular sort of project, the whole idea is about talking about society and trying to get people's brains kind of chugging on in a different direction. And to do that, of course, you have to expose people to it. So this is kind of my way of circumventing the interaction part. I get to put something together, and then I get to go away and do my own thing by myself. Meanwhile, what I put together is exposed to other people.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you didn't use your real name and like, dude, it didn't really. I mean, even for me, it was like hard to figure out. I'm like, who the hell did this film? I'm like, we emailed back and forth. I'm like, who am I even talking to? It's like it was one of those things where it was cool because I mean, I think there is something about doing creative, artistic type things. Like even when I write music or whatever, like I do like doing it on my own. I know everybody says we're social creatures, and we are, but I think that there is something about when you're being creative and you're doing, your work, and in your case, the film or whatnot. There is something about being alone and being at peace and kind of not having any distractions, which is hard in today's day to not have distractions because we're constantly distracted by everything around us, phones and TVs and crying babies and or whatnot. So and then you put the full high def version of it online, which is really cool too. And because some people what they'll do is they'll put like a low quality version, and then like you can buy the high quality version. So that so the combination of that and like the fact that you didn't use your real name, I'm like, I don't know who this guy is who did this film, but I'm like, he's probably cool shit. And I'm like, I probably want to talk to him, so I'll throw him an email. So have you connected with any the other people or the other type of movements or anything like that in the film, the Zeitgeist movement, or is that something that you're just putting out there as an idea, or do you actually subscribe to those ideas, or was it just like saying, hey, these are possible options of other ways of looking at the way the world works?
I spent some time as a Zeitgeist participant for a while. My biggest motivation, I guess, I wouldn't say that I left the movement, but to sort of disassociate myself as a direct Zeitgeist member is the idea of an organization, just in general, the idea of an organization, even something as loosely defined as the Zeitgeist movement is, I don't find super appealing. I mean, kind of what I was indicating before is I tend to work as an individual and function best on my own as an individual. I do support a lot of the ideas that the Zeitgeist movement advocates, including the abolishment of the monetary system. I have maybe a couple of different ideas about exactly how that would happen, but I think we're probably, as far as that goes, I'm probably about 90% of the same mindset as those folks. But I tend to identify myself more with the sort of the culture of Anonymous more than I do of the Zeitgeist movement. So if I was to say that I was a participant of any organization, I would probably have to say of an Anon. But again, I mean, Anonymous is about as non-organization as you can possibly get, and because of that, I find that appealing. But they also, it's a collection of people trying to do kind of the same thing that I'm trying to do, which is figure out how to make things better, and not really interested in playing by the rules to do so.
Well, because the rules are bullshit. I mean, they
are.
Yeah, I mean,
the rules are no longer in the interest of the people, and they're no longer a level playing field either. So you're not really doing yourself or anybody any favors, in my opinion, if you're fixated on working within the rules.
Yeah, when there's, I've had this conversation with numerous of people, and it's one of those things where I always say, I'm like, isn't the whole point of rules and regulations to make something fair, or to kind of even a playing field, or protect somebody? I'm like, how many laws can you come up with that protect no one, that protect, that harm people in even some cases. I mean, you look at they just re-aired, I think, Weed 2 on by the documentary by Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and which was a huge deal because CNN, for them to be just, actually for them to cut away from the Malaysia talk was a plus, but the Malaysia plane talk, because that's just crazy ratings for them, and that's all they really give a fuck about. But the thing is that, like, when you watch something like that and you see people who have Crohn's disease, MS, a little girl who has 75 seizures a day, and they can't even have a good quality of life where they can wake up every day and do what they want to do their hobbies, go to work without any pain or suffering. Like, and the fact that there's doctors finally coming out speaking, saying, what are these laws protecting? It's a substance one. It's considered what is it? A substance one, which means it's very addictive and has no medical benefits, which is complete bullshit. So I'm like, if anybody wants to look at, are the rules there to protect us? Why don't you just look at that? The marijuana rule alone is just, it's so overwhelmingly retarded that there's no other way of putting it, that it proves, like you said, like the rules and regulations are in theory are designed to protect somebody or help level the playing field, but in most cases they're not. I mean, you have politicians that lobbyists are basically giving them the language for bills, and they're not even reading them. I mean, you had a great part in your film where I think you had a couple politicians, right, that said something about they didn't even read the Patriot Act.
I didn't actually use footage of them saying that, no, but I have seen that.
But then maybe it might have been another documentary that I watched. I watched so many of them, but yeah, but I remember seeing that clip. Yeah, I thought for some reason it was your film. I know you definitely talked about it in your film.
Yeah,
but
there's an image that's used towards the front of the film of it's like a cartoon, an illustration of a guy that says, "Nobody tells me what to say." And the little chat bubble of him talking is being written in by a pencil that has the word lobbyist on it.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, so it's one of those things where, like, I remember seeing that even some politicians didn't even read the Patriot Act when they agreed to it and signed off on it. So it just, like you said, so it's just one of those things where I'm not saying go out and break the law, and get arrested. I mean, Adam Kokesh kind of learned his lesson with the bringing a rifle or whatever he did to Washington, or a gun, and then got arrested. I think that, that really doesn't get your message across too well. But I think that, like you said, Anonymous, they do a lot of good things. You look at it, when there was that macing, or pepper spray at Occupy, that they released information on the officer, and really when politics and government and laws aren't making people accountable for their actions, I'm glad somebody is, So I thought stuff like that's really important. But do you ever worry about the fact that something like Occupy, for example, the big thing you always hear about Occupy is the fact that it wasn't organized, and that's why it didn't pick up any traction. So do you think that, like, maybe a thing like Zeitgeist, even though it's a little bit more put together, more organized, like, you almost have to be more organized to kind of get a point across? Or do you think that you can continue awareness and stuff like that when everybody's kind of, I guess, free to do what they want and it's not so organized?
Well, there's probably some people who would disagree with me, but I think the biggest benefit to being organized is that it allows people to accept new ideas that they might not accept otherwise if there were only individuals telling them these. But I think that's a cultural thing that we're kind of underwater in right now, is that it's if other people don't agree with something, that gives you an incentive not to agree with it, and that, to me, that doesn't really hold a lot of water. I want to know the guts of the idea that's in front of me, and I'm not really particularly concerned with what other people think about it. But I know that's not the case for most people, and a lot of people maybe don't even realize to what extent they're sort of getting their decisions or getting their positions from the positions of the people around them, indirectly. There's a lot of studies that were done about. I want to say it was called group coercion, where they did studies. They'd put 8 people in a room, and they'd show them slides of different lengths of line, and then they'd show them a fourth line off to the right that matched the length of one of those lines. And they would ask each person at the table one by one. They'd say, which line does this match, A, B, or C? And the first few times, well, the catch of the study was that there was only one person in that lineup that was a test subject, and everybody else was a plant. And they had instructed all the plants to for the first 2 or 3 slides to give the correct answer, but after that they would start picking the wrong answer. And what they wanted to see was the one person that they were actually testing. They wanted to find out if that person would continue to pick the right answer, or if they would start picking the wrong answer because of the group. And what happens is that something like 60 to 70% of the time people would pick the wrong answer and go along with the group, even when it was obviously the wrong answer, like very clearly the wrong answer. And there's a few different studies that test a few different nuances to this. So, but yeah, that sort of psychological thing that happens.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest benefit to organizing, to get your point across. But what I would hope for in a decade or two is that maybe culture had changed enough that people would be able to approach ideas on their own with the confidence to make a decision about ideas on their own. And in that situation, I don't think there would be any benefit to organizing on a large scale.
So
I think that's playing by the old set of rules.
So basically, and I've seen a lot of studies like that too. I've heard, I don't even know if it's just an old story or if it's an actual study, but they're talking about how they showed like one animal or monkey how to clean fruit, and then another animal saw him, or another monkey saw him do it, so then he did it, and then like by the time it got to like 20 monkeys, and they all started doing it because they just followed the crowd. So I think that, there is something about people wanting to be a part of a group, and there probably is something that's a little bit, you kind of have to keep aware of the fact that when people do join a movement, like, okay, I agree with the Zeitgeist movement, I'm a part of this movement. Now, almost everything they say, you're going to you kind of maybe even not even conscious of it, but you're going along with it just because you're a part of this group. So is that like what you kind of mean, like that type of thing where you kind of put restrictions on your thinking because you're a part of a group and then you're just following the trend or the tribe, I guess?
Yeah, to some extent, but I kind of see it more as lazy than scared. But I mean, you could argue it either way, I guess.
Yeah.
In my mind, forcing yourself to address the ideas on your own and coming to your own conclusion is almost like a mental workout. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the more confident you become in doing it.
Yeah, and I think debating with people that you don't agree with is really important. And I don't mean like trying to prove each other wrong. It's not like when you have a creationist and a atheist kind of debating, because at the end of the day, like, nobody learned shit, and they're both going to be what they are when when the debate started. But I think being willing to listen to people, if you are a part of the Zeitgeist movement, if you are a part of whatever, Occupy or whatever, if you're a 9/11 truther or whatever label they want to use, if you're a part of something, and to kind of listen to somebody who maybe disagrees with you and listen to their perspectives, and like you said, kind of I think self-reflection is so important. Like that, we don't have enough thinking time, I guess. It's like one thing I love about listening to music and just like going for a drive is the fact that you have time to kind of gather your thoughts and put things together. And and we don't do a lot of that. Like we said, we're like constantly distracted all the time. And because of it, I think that there's a lot of shit we would figure out if we just had a little bit of time to like think and put things in perspective. And I think too often we're too busy with, just, I guess, surviving, just like paying your bills, taking care, your home, taking care of your family, your chores, going to work, pick up the kids. It's like we're constantly on the go. We don't really have any time to sit back and think, and that's why I think it's important for people to do that, and so I definitely agree that there is something in the fact that you do have to kind of put things together on your own and not follow a group and kind of come up with your own conclusions. But I think that conversation is important too, and I think that first, for at least from my experiences, one thing I've taken a lot of is watching a documentary like yours, owned and operated, and then that's thought provoking, and then next time I have some free time, or soon after it, I just sit there and I kind of think about some of the things I watch, some of the opinions, some of the theories, and I think that is important, but I think that we put ourselves in a box if we don't listen to other perspectives and other opinions, because I say this on the show all the time. I'm like I could be wrong about a lot of shit, and a lot of times I am, but I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong and move on from it. It's like we've gotten to the point where admitting that you're wrong has become a bad thing, you know, and it just, you know, I think it's disarming when somebody says, you know, is willing to admit that they're wrong, because when somebody is willing to admit that, you know, maybe somebody makes a good point on a certain topic, then it's one of those things where I feel like, well, now I can trust this person, because when he says he really believes in something, he's not just trying to prove me wrong. He actually does believe in that, and he has a well thought out opinion on it. So I think that's definitely important. But what type of documentaries and what influenced you? Like, I know that you were saying that a lot of people didn't know too much about your personal, I guess, views on the world or whatnot. And, you know, one thing, because I'm a big documentary fan, I'm always asking people, like, what documentary end up, like, I guess, for lack of a better term, causing of awakening or kind of changing your perspective on things. You know, you watch this you know, Loose Change is one that's really popular for people. Brzezinski, the Business of Cancer, is one for a lot of people too. And so, like, did you have any maybe books or documentaries, anything that you kind of watched that you're like, holy shit, like, this just turned my whole world upside down?
Yeah. Boy, I mean, there's a lot. And you know, some of them had smaller impacts, but a lot of those smaller impacts, they add up. I guess if I had to say what the most impactful ones that I've seen, the first time I saw Zeitgeist Addendum, that hit me pretty hard, because I had never really even considered the idea of getting rid of the monetary system. But I kind of was already of the mindset that things are kind of fucked. So that was a little bit jarring, I guess, for me, because it was a new thought, and it took me a while to kind of process this idea of just getting rid of the monetary system altogether. I think before that, I saw The Corporation. That was
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. That one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm actually having somebody. I just want to tell my listeners, because I actually haven't mentioned it yet. But I'm actually having somebody from the movie, a director, a filmmaker, somebody from somebody from the movie. I'm not even sure who I talked to, but somebody agreed to be on a while ago, and they're doing like a anniversary thing next month. So we're gonna have somebody from that film. But yeah, I highly recommend that too. I think it really goes into the psyche of how marketing has become brainwashing, and how well thought out every single part of you know, commercials and sounds and colors, and how well thought out everything is, you know. So when people say they're brainwashing you, it's not too far from the truth.
Yeah.
And any other ones? Anyone that, like, you think was one of the first ones that, like, really, you know, do you have like a first one, or like you said, maybe there was ones that had like smaller impacts, and then, like you said, it added up?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of the ones that had smaller impacts. There was Gasland. That was a really good one. I found that one very interesting. If you're not familiar with it, it's about fracking. It was the first documentary that ever exposed me to fracking and what that's all about. There was Consuming Kids, I think is what it's called. That might not be the right term. I want to say it's called Consuming Kids. That's about marketing to children, and kind of the culture of marketing to children and the damage that it's doing, that sort of thing. That one was a really good one. I mean, there's
so many
others. I just watched Blackfish last night.
Yeah, that's an awesome one. Yeah,
that was a really good one. The only problem with that is it doesn't seem to expose anything that I didn't really already assume was going on.
Yeah.
But maybe there's other folks out there that haven't quite gotten there yet. So for them, it might be an important film to watch.
Yeah, and that's another one that's unusually. It's weird that it was on CNN. You know, that CNN's airing it and stuff, and you know, I guess every once in a while they still air something that's worth watching. But yeah, I believe it's on Netflix too. And so Crackin Films, is that something that you created?
Yeah. Well, Crackin is a nickname that I got way back in my I guess we'll call them my heavier drinking days. And my nickname was Crackin Skulls, and it was shortened to Crackin, so people just call me Crackin. And when it came time for me to come up with a name for what I wanted to do, I guess I'll just call it Crackin Films. That sounds fine to me. So that's what I use, and it's a nickname to the short answer.
And you're planning on doing, because you have something else. I think I saw it on your YouTube channel. You have another project you're working on.
Yeah,
Can we talk
I
about
have.
that, or I don't want to? I don't want to.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
we could talk. It's not almost done, so I got a lot more work to do on it, but it's coming along. I'm making progress every day. It's The project is called Ego Side, and it's basically the idea of it is that the ego is a result of imperfect human biology, and society is built on the ego. That's in a nutshell. That's kind of what it's about. Um, it's going to be using a lot more high quality footage than the first time around. Um, it's also going to be using a lot more samples from things like movies. Um,
How do you get a
hopefully,
you
what's that?
you ever worry about using footage like that and somebody? Oh, well, you if you're not, I guess, selling it, then they can't really bust your balls too much, right?
Well, you just, I mean, yeah, I'm not selling anything, and I'm not promoting anything outside of the film itself. So it's all fair use, and I just, the when it really gets down to it, I'm like I said, I'm trying to put together the best vehicle for the most important information that I am capable of. And in doing so, if I end up breaking some rules, then they're broke. But I'm not super worried about it because, like I said, like you said, and I said, I'm not trying to sell anything. So there's nothing they can really do to stop the movie from getting out there. If it's good, and I put it on the internet, then it's done. It's out there. It's not. It can't be stopped if it's good. If it's not good, then it's not going to go anywhere, and it won't matter anyway. So yeah, I guess in a nutshell, no, I'm not too worried about it.
And yeah, I think that's an important topic. I'm glad you're actually doing a film about that. One, my hat goes off to you to getting all those film clips because what a fucking pain in the ass I'm sure it is to put all of it together. Because I don't do a whole lot of I've done like a couple little like videos for my music project and stuff like that, and I'm just like, this fucking sucks. I'm like, it just takes it's so time consuming, so I think it's when I watch a film like Owned and Operated, I'm just like, holy shit. I'm like, the time it must have took to do this film. How long did it take you from like beginning? Well, beginning, it wasn't really even meant to be the film, right? So but do you have like a time frame of more or less how long it took to do everything?
If I had to guess, I would say it probably took me something in the ballpark of 18 months to do from start to finish. Bearing in mind that I don't have to worry, I don't really have to worry about a lot of things that other films have to worry about, such as I didn't travel anywhere and I don't have any cameras because I'm not filming any of my own footage, so I don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. There's not really a crew to speak of for me to have to manage. So there's a lot of areas where I'm actually saving a lot of time. It doesn't take as long as a similar documentary that did have those things would probably take.
Yeah, yeah. And to go back to your film you're working on about ego, are you gonna touch bases on anything like because I've had people on the show and we've talked a lot about ayahuasca and people
Hmm.
who have done DMT and the difference that it makes on your perspective on things and how it removes ego or at least forces you to look at yourself in the mirror
Hmm.
without the justified bullshit. Because I think one thing people don't realize is that and I've had these conversations with people where I'm just like, listen, I'm like, it's really hard to like truly honestly self-reflect without justifying bullshit. It's like we justify a lot of our actions or a lot of the things we do and stuff, and a lot of, like you said, a lot of our actions are motivated by ego that we might not even realize is motivating us. So is that one of the things you think you're going to hit on? Is that kind of similar to some of the topics you're going to hit on in the film?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the big differences between this project and the last one is this one will kind of have narrators that are throughout the film, and I'll be using Alan Watts and Terrence McKenna are going to be in the film a lot. So Terrence references the use of psychedelics a lot in his lectures. So there's going to be a lot of that in there, and there'll be a little more Rogan in there as well. And he's big on things like DMT, ayahuasca, mushrooms, that kind of thing. So
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Rogan. He's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, and he's I think exposed a lot of people to, I guess, the benefits of those type of psychedelic drugs. And actually, Terrence McKenna's brother, Dennis McKenna, I actually sample him in the theme song for this podcast, and I think actually the sample was from when he was on the Rogan podcast. But I mean, when you listen these people who have experimented with this, and you hear Aubrey Marcus, Joe Rogan's buddy, CEO of OnIt.com, they talk about it, and just like you see how calm and relaxed and like they're great perspectives on things, and you have to assume that a lot of that does come from like their experimental trials of these DMTs and ayahuascas. And Graham Hancock's another one that's actually he's right in the beginning of my song. I opened it up with him talking about psychedelics and how if people don't if the government doesn't let us have the freedom to I guess figure out our own consciousness and kind of figure out who we are and what we do, then he's like, then we really don't have any type of freedom, so so that's awesome, because that's a different twist. That's kind of a even though they both, I think, are both films are for the purpose of helping people kind of be aware of finding more meaning in life and kind of how the system's corrupt. They're both kind of different subjects, and I'm not sure. Besides DMT, the spirit molecule, I haven't seen any real documentaries that really focus on that type of just specifically ego, and
Right.
and how important that is. So what influenced you with that? Have you I don't know if I should be asking you this. I don't want you get you in trouble, but do you have friends that have done DMT?
No, I don't know anybody personally that's done DMT, but I've talked about it with people, and I have some friends that are interested in the idea, and I have others that are not, and I have still others who have never even heard of it yet, which is a little bizarre, but they're out there.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to focus on the psychedelics as much as, for example, DMT, the spirit molecule, which, I mean, obviously that's entirely about psychedelics. The new project, psychedelics are in there as a I don't know how to. They're in there. There's a section in there that sort of discusses psychedelics specifically, and there's references to it sprinkled throughout. But primarily it's focused on the ego that well, I shouldn't say the ego, the surpassing the ego through things like meditation. I've actually got a lot of new information, I guess, or things, I guess, topics that interest me. A lot of new things that have come from listening. Well, I started listening to Alan Watts a lot more in depth, and I got some audiobooks on Buddhist meditation, that kind of thing, from some monks that have written some stuff, and I find that extremely compelling. The problem I've always had with psychedelics is not what they do, but I feel like in my own experience with psychedelics, which doesn't include DMT, so I can't speak to that, but it's always been like exposing the universe, but through a low definition screen, so to speak, because I'm not really present enough to recognize the significance of it other than, wow, this is really cool. But through meditation, I'm able to glimpse some of those same things and actually be present enough to realize, at least to some extent, to realize the significance of what I'm seeing. And to me, that's pretty important. So I probably play up those kinds of methods a little bit more in the film. But psychedelics are definitely important. One of the biggest benefits to psychedelics is just it's like hooking a car battery up to your brain and restarting everything. And if you're just completely embroiled in the culture that surrounds you, and you have absolutely no concept of even thinking differently, psychedelics are probably the best way to break something like that. But to my mind, the next step beyond that is something like meditation.
Yeah, and that's an important point you're making, is the idea of people are so stuck in this cycle of like, thinking this certain way, where anything outside of, I guess seeing the world in a different light just seems completely unrealistic. I had Douglas Ruskoff on. He was one of my earlier guests when I started the show, and I remember him saying once that we probably have the technology or close to tech, or I don't know if he said we have or we're closer to the technology to the point where we could automate everything, where basically, humans could spend more time thinking and doing, that type of work, and the boring type of labor work could be just automated. All automated machines could do it. And he's like, we could live in a world where we work 2 weeks out of the year, and everybody could pick their own 2 weeks, whatever week that works for them, and whatnot. So I remember like bouncing that, that conversation off some friends, and they're looking at me like I'm fucking crazy. And I'm just like, listen, we're so used to, we have this understanding of the world, the way that we were born into, but this is just the way that we decided to make a civilization work. But it could have went different directions. It could have been very different. The government was designed to try to help, I guess, propose the idea of democracy, and that's the best way of having a fair civilization. But and the same thing with money and currency and all this stuff. But all these ideas could have been, we could have went a different direction. It could be completely different. And I think people have a hard time looking at anything that they weren't, that isn't the norm or the standard today. And I think that there is it goes back to, I guess, the nature versus nurture conversation. That do you believe that a lot of our instincts and stuff like that are our nature, or do you believe that a lot of it's influenced by nurture? And I think Jacques Fresco has said quite a few times, the idea that if you put an American baby in Japan or China or whatever, and he grows up in China, he's going to speak Chinese just like Chinese people, and he's going to love Chinese food, and he's going to, and say vice versa if you put a Chinese person in America. So, it's kind of an example of the fact that, a lot of what influences us or what we think is norm or the way the world should work is stuff that we kind of were born into and have accepted as the norm, So, do you find that that's kind of a similar type of issue that like you have, when you're talking to people about maybe these other types of way or these other options of, like you said, your opinion on currency, do you get people who've kind of push back and say, oh, that sounds insane. This works. This is the way the world works. This is what, how it should be, does the idea of like having a world without money, do you still get the same response to that as I get, like where people just seem like you're fucking crazy? What are you talking about, a world without currency? But we go to a library and we take books and we return them. We go to a gym, we work out. We don't need to own them. We can use stuff and not have to own stuff. So. But do you get some of those responses when with people when you're talking to people about maybe things that are a little bit out of their realm of I guess the standard thinking?
Oh yeah, all the time, and yeah, especially with the monetary system thing. There's either you get it or you absolutely are just nauseated by the idea of it, and there's not really any middle ground. I've not come across anybody who says, oh, I think I see how that could work, but no, I think it's a little bit better if we keep it. There's not really anybody that seems to take that position, but. Yeah, even with other stuff, ideas about how people could govern themselves. There's a lot of folks who just don't. They're not interested. It doesn't sound realistic at all to them to even start to hear the conversation about that. And there's other things, but that's like I was saying earlier. That's not really my comfort zone to have those types of conversations with people like face to face. And so it could just be that I'm not very good at that particular method of discussing those ideas, and so I do things like make videos instead. There's I don't want to say that there's definitely, but there could be some videos in the future that explore more extreme cultural changes. I'm not entirely sure that I have those ideas nailed down in my head enough yet, but there's stuff floating around in there.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think that's important to kind of like we've talked about, the idea of just kind of looking at all perspectives. Just don't be sold on one one thing and say, well, that's that's the right way of looking, that's the right future, the right path for our future, and all other opinions you're just going to dismiss. Like, I think it's important to look at all options, and I mean, I'm a big fan of this, of what the Zeitgeist movement, like you said, Zeitgeist Addendum was a awesome movie, and it really showed how, how basically money's like, it's made up numbers going from one computer to another that doesn't even exist, and there's no real value in it, and basically, I mean, you look at it personally, there's a lot of films coming out about the collapse of the American economy, and really it's almost like unavoidable at this point, because when you look at it, like, we're importing way more than we export, and there's nothing to hold value to the dollar. It's not backed by gold anymore. It hasn't been since Nixon or whatever, and it just seems like eventually something big might happen, and at least I feel like films like yours are like causing this, and Lee Camp said it in your movie, and we talked about it when he was on the show, the idea that a mental awareness type of rebellion is scarier than a physical type of revolution. Like a mental revolution, that's gonna affect a lot of people, and that's gonna, those type of people who are outspoken and can share ideas, can make a big difference. And this podcast, the ripple effect, and that's the whole point of the ripple effect. And I believe that films like yours and anybody who shares ideas and stuff, they're doing their part in causing awareness, and even if we don't see it in our time where it's where there's a huge transition, I feel like at some, and I feel like we probably will definitely see it in our time, but I definitely feel like we're all these people, who do these films, who do these podcasts, who comedians like Lee Camp, everybody is doing their part in kind of helping this awareness, and I think that there is like this mental revolution where people are becoming more aware than ever. I think when James Corbett was on our show, he talked about how, years ago, nobody knew what a false flag was, and now everybody knows what a false flag attack is. It's like those type of changes, and people, being more aware of like the Patriot Act and the NDAA Act, and we're more aware with what the government's doing with drones. I mean, I just watched a documentary yesterday or a couple days ago about the war on whistleblowers. It's like those type of documentaries need to be out. People need to see that the rules are stacked against us, and they're only protecting those in power. They're not out to help us. And so do you feel like we're going in the right direction? Do you feel like it seems like, and you being a part of the community, do you feel like you're seeing more and more people kind of be more aware and questioning things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we're definitely going in the right direction. I think a lot of what's happening with the establishment right now, with the militarization of the police and the harsher anti-quote unquote terrorist laws that are passed, like, for example, NDAA and all that kind of stuff. I think that it's a reflection of the fact that the way that we've been enslaved for so long was a mental enslavement. And they're losing that battle. The establishment is losing that battle, and so they're reverting to the old school way of enslavement, which is physical enslavement, more and more. I think that is because they're losing. But at some point, their infrastructure of the establishment is still built on the rest of us, and when we stop providing support, then they're not going to have anything to physically enforce. They're not going to have anything to build their enforcement mechanism upon. There will be nothing left to enslave us with. So the winning that mental enslavement war, I think, is happening, and I think that's the only thing that needs to happen. So I do think we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that our ability to connect with people today, and just I saw a statistic that like in 2020, like 70% of the world is going to have, or 77% of the world or something like that's going to have internet access, and there's going to be people in third world countries that have cell phones that they can Google information and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So it's gonna, as it becomes more and more common, and more people have access to it, where it's going to be just more and more people who are going to be exposed to information and documentaries and great thinkers and philosophers who are going to hopefully change their way of thinking, or at least question things, and that becomes the I guess the beginning of the ripple, I guess, for not to try to use the name of my podcast. It's just so common. But hey, I just want to thank you so much for being with me today. I think it was it's cool to to talk to somebody kind of like myself who kind of just had this idea, was motivated by I guess trying to do their part and trying to spread awareness and share that with people. And I think that's fucking awesome. I think it's awesome that that you were just some a regular dude who just had some ideas, and it's funny that you say you're not very much of a debater or whatnot, because you're very well spoken, and your ideas are very well thought out, and which is awesome, and I probably figured that by watching your documentary. But I just want to thank you so much for being with us. I think it was awesome to kind of get somebody who put something out for free, have and just for not for any personal gain, but just for like I said, to spread awareness. So I think that was awesome, Relic. I really want to thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for all that, and I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, and do you want to tell my listeners where they can find your the movie, and I know you have a website also, and any if they want to help spread the film or whatnot, or where they can find it.
Yeah, I mean you can should be able to just Google it or look it up on YouTube. But I do have a website at crackinfilms.com that has links to all that stuff. There's a Facebook page. There's a Google Plus page. I'm sure that if you can find one of them, they should all be linked together. So you should be able to find whatever you need. If there's something that somebody wants from the film, so like technical extent, like they want a clip or they want the audio or something like that, I might be able to provide that if you want to send me a message or something. But there is a DVD that is available. You can download the DVD. It's a torrent, so you can find the link to that on either the website, or you can go to the YouTube and look in the description and find a link to the torrent there to download. That should still be running. If it's not, send me a message.
Yeah.
And I think that's about it.
And do you have a rough idea when your next film will be released, roughly? I know that there's so many factors into that, but
yeah. If I would.
You have a date that
I was hoping to have it out before April of this year, but that does not look like it's going to happen. So I would say at this point, I'm going to try and have it out before the new year. I'm going to try and have it finished as soon as I can, but it's a big undertaking, and it's taken a lot out of me, and I can only do so much at a time. So I get it out as fast as I can, hopefully before the new year.
Yeah, but definitely don't sacrifice your art for for trying to get it out quicker. I've been like, even doing music, sometimes I don't release anything in a while, and I'm anxious to release something, and I'm like, dude, why the fuck did I rush that? Now it's out and I have to live with it, when I know that I could have done little tweaks to make it better. So I think people would rather wait and have you be happy with what you release than get it a month or two quicker. So definitely check out the website, check out the film. I ran into it, I believe, on YouTube. He has a YouTube channel, Crackin Films, I believe, is the channel, and you can find it there for free. It's in good quality. It's in a high def, actually. It's and a lot of the clips are. The films, and it's not like one of those typical YouTube videos where it's all grainy and whatnot. Obviously, you use some old clips, so that's obviously just gonna be grainy for the because it was filmed grainy. But so definitely check that out and support the guy. To share it, tweet it, and we'll keep looking out for the new one. I mean, the next one seems really interesting, so I'm definitely looking forward to it, and hopefully we can have you on again when that one releases, to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Thanks, Relic. I really appreciate it, man. Enjoy the rest of your day, and keep in touch, man. I really appreciate you being on.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks. Take care.